There's something I wish someone had told me years ago. The most dangerous story you'll ever believe isn't the one someone tells you. It's the one you quietly begin telling yourself. Because after hearing it enough times, it stops feeling like a story. It starts feeling like the truth. And once that happens, you don't just think differently. You live differently. Looking back, I can trace almost every major decision in my life back to a handful of sentences I believed without ever questioning them. Not because they were true, because I repeated them long enough that they became part of my identity. When I was a kid, I believed I was ugly. Not because I had looked in the mirror and reached that conclusion on my own. Because little comments slowly accumulated over the years. Some came from classmates, some from adults, some from rejection, some from comparison. I often found myself surrounded by lighter-skinned kids. I looked different, and as a child, that difference felt much bigger than it really was. At 6 or 7 years old, you don't know how to separate someone's opinion from your identity. So I didn't. I accepted it. Without realizing it, their voices slowly became my own. Eventually, I stopped hearing them. Because I started saying the same things to myself. I'm not attractive. I'm less than. I'll probably be rejected. Those weren't observations. They were stories. But I didn't know the difference. That story quietly changed the way I lived. I avoided approaching girls. I avoided pictures. Whenever someone complimented me, I assumed they were just being nice. I rejected opportunities before they had the chance to reject me. I thought I was protecting myself. Looking back, I was protecting a lie. Then something strange happened. When I got to university, beautiful women started talking to me. Some showed genuine interest. And instead of believing them, I questioned them. I assumed they were simply being kind. Because accepting their interest would have required me to question the story I'd been believing for years. And that story felt more familiar than reality. The same thing happened with music. When I was 15, I picked up a guitar. Something clicked immediately. Playing music felt natural. It didn't feel like work. It felt like breathing. Then I met my guitar teacher. He was incredible. Every note sounded effortless. Instead of seeing what was possible, I saw proof that I'd never get there. I never actually asked, can I become that good? I simply assumed people like me don't become musicians. One comparison, one sentence, one story, and suddenly a dream that once felt alive started to feel impossible. Not because of reality, because of a belief. Years later, I became a software engineer. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Computer science challenged me every single day. Music had always come naturally. Engineering didn't. Still, I finished the degree. I worked for years. I built software. I solved problems. From the outside, it looked like success. But inside, the narrator hadn't changed. Every meeting made me nervous. Every unexpected calendar invite made my heart race. Whenever I looked around, I compared myself to people who seemed smarter, more confident, more certain. I kept asking myself, do I really belong here? I didn't realize it then, but I had changed careers. I hadn't changed stories. The biggest surprise came years later. One afternoon, I found old photographs of myself as a child. I stared at them for a long time. And I remember thinking, that's the kid who believed he was ugly. I saw something completely different. A normal kid. A kind face, balanced features, a boy who had believed strangers more than his own eyes. That moment shook me, not because my appearance had changed, because my story had. Then I started noticing something else. Every chapter of my life had been shaped by invisible sentences. I'm not good enough. I'm behind. I'll never play like him. I'll probably fail. None of those were facts. None of them came with evidence. They were simply stories I'd repeated so many times, they had become my reality. That's when I asked myself a question that changed everything. What if the narrator in my head isn't always telling the truth? At first, that question felt uncomfortable, because if the story wasn't true, then I'd spent years making decisions based on fiction. But it was also freeing, because if a story can be learned, it can also be rewritten. Today, those old thoughts still visit me sometimes. Before uploading a video, before writing a song, before trying something new. The difference is, I don't automatically believe them anymore. Instead, I pause, and I ask myself, is this reality? Or is this just an old story wearing a familiar voice? Most of the time, it's the second one. I've learned something I wish I'd understood much earlier. The stories we repeat become the lives we live. Tell yourself you're not enough, and eventually you'll stop trying. Tell yourself you're too late, and you'll never begin. Tell yourself your dream belongs to someone else, and you'll spend years watching instead of creating. But the opposite is also true. The moment you begin questioning those stories, you begin questioning the limits they placed on your life. Maybe that's why growth doesn't always begin with changing your circumstances. Sometimes it begins with changing the sentence you've been repeating in your mind for years. Because the most dangerous story you'll ever believe isn't the one someone told you when you were young. It's the one you kept telling yourself long after they stopped. So today, I want to leave you with one question. Not because I have the answer, because I think it's worth asking. What story have you believed for so long that you've stopped noticing it's only a story? Maybe the life you've been searching for is waiting on the other side of that question.